Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. You thought I was gone, but I am back. I'm not even sure where I was. This week, we are joined by special guests, or at least what? Let me do that again. Sorry.
You're out of practice, apparently.
I know it. I know. Well, the problem is I'm riffing on a script that is not updated with this sentence. So let me just change a special guest. Okay. This week, we are joined by a special guest from our friends, the Monster Movie Happy Hour, to discuss Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is episode 352. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the Pan American Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Also, a certified genius or an authentic wacko.
Or both of those things. Both of those things. Welcome. As always, color commentary from the one and only Julia Guzman, Mckenna Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Bustin makes me feel good.
That's so nice. I'm so glad to hear that. And joining us from the Monster Movie Happy Hour, finally, historic book illustrator, David Geister. Hello.
Hello. Good to be back with you guys.
I know.
Is he historical?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I feel like it's Mary and Scott send their regards. They absolutely love you folks. But for a variety of reasons, we're unable to join us this time. So I unfortunately have to carry the weight of that throughout the evening.
That's a tall order, but we trust
It's a very tall order.
Big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, but this is going to be super fun. Now, Ghostbusters Afterlife is a 2021 American supernatural comedy film directed by Jason Reitman, who co-wrote the screenplay with Gil Kenan. It stars Carrie Coon and Finn Wolfhard and Mckenna Grace, who actually sings a song in the closing credits, Paul Rudd, who we know from Halloween 6, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver.
I'm sorry. I gotta go back to. I gotta go back to. We know Paul Rudd from Halloween 6. I mean, he's the sexiest man alive. Like, we gotta start with that and go from there. So many other things we know him from.
That's why the world
funny.
worships Tommy Doyle.
Evil dies tonight.
Oh dear.
Annie Potts reappears.
Yay!
It is a sequel to Ghostbusters. All right, so there's a big story of the development of all of this, but we don't have to get into all of that right now. Basically, set 32 years after the events of the second film, a single mom and her two kids move to a small town in Oklahoma. We should talk about whether or not this looks like Oklahoma. And they discover their connection to the original Ghostbusters and their grandfather's secret legacy. We started seeing trailers for this movie a long time ago. Because I remember seeing trailers for it from well before the pandemic. And then the pandemic came and the movie just burrowed deep underground like a locust. And then it has reemerged and it's been exciting to see it come back. So let's get first our opening thoughts, and then we'll take a brief digression to talk about alcohol. So opening thoughts. Let's go. Drew, since Drew, you are the king of Ghostbusters fandom. Drew, David, Julia, Tony, and then we'll talk about our drinks. Mr. Drew, opening thoughts, Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Well, I want to start out by saying, I feel very powerful this week because I've had so many people contact me and go, I know you love Ghostbusters so much. Need to know whether or not this is worth seeing in the theater or not. And, never in my entire life have I had so many people come out of the woodwork to care about whether or not. And the thing I keep telling them is, I'm not 100% certain that, I'm giving you an objective opinion because I literally have never met a Ghostbusters movie. Like, I love Ghostbusters. Like, I love Ghostbusters in all the various incarnations of Ghostbusters. Like, you can just keep giving me Ghostbusters until I'm on my deathbed and I will die happy. However, I can say this about this movie. I think that this is a very interesting take on the material, because this is the first Ghostbusters movie that's actually about death in a more personal level, which makes it unique within the franchise, because the other movies, the previous 3 Ghostbusters films, ghosts are an obstacle for you to overtake in a sort of blue collar work environment, whereas this very much deals with the concept of grief and grieving, and family history and how death affects that. And so I think, even though there's actually been a lot of film critics that probably would throw things at me for saying this and would say that they disagree with me about this, I think this is the most different of the 4 Ghostbusters movies that now existed. And I really like the uniqueness of it. But of course, as a fan, I love this, every frame of this movie. I was so happy while watching it, and I even got a little misty towards the end, but
Verklempt.
yeah, a little verklempt. So the fact that it was set in Oklahoma, even though it's a very different looking Oklahoma.
I mean, only the topography. I mean, this place looks barren like Oklahoma.
Wait, your farm doesn't have any mountains with old like hieroglyphics in it?
Yeah,
I mean,
carvings.
Canada should definitely be best supporting actor for the role of Oklahoma.
Yes.
But yeah, I loved the movie, and I do think you should go see it in the theater if you're able, because it definitely benefited. This was the first movie I saw back in a movie theater, and it definitely benefited from the big screen experience.
Thank you. That was fantastic. That was really great. And I should mention, I don't want to be unfair. There are mountains in Oklahoma. I've just never witnessed them personally, but there are mountains. So it's not.
It's a lot prettier than Oklahoma is.
I'd say so. No, I think that's fair. Yeah. All right. David, you are joining us from far away at the Monster Movie Happy Hour.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you are. So what are your opening thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Well, from down here in the Deep Dark Lounge, my perspective is this. This movie was the thing I needed in my life right now, probably more than anything else, which came as a big surprise. And it worked in that particular way for a variety of reasons, which I could get into later. I could get into now. I don't know. It's up to you. But well, let me just say this. As a man of a certain age, Jason and I talked about this recently in the interview about 18 miles from town. We're not exactly kids anymore. Right. So I'm feeling my mortality more and more every day. And so any movie that deals with grief is something that I immediately perk up and pay attention to. And any movie that deals with grief that also is a movie that I saw in my prime. I saw it within days of it coming out that first year. It was a absolutely must see. Perhaps just as importantly, I saw it with my movie buddy, Allie, my youngest daughter, who I've been watching movies with for 20 years now, since she was 10 or 11, right? Dragging her into the theater. More importantly, she dragging me into the theater to see a number of sometimes wonderful and sometimes forgettable romantic comedies. But anyhow, so the two of us were sitting there, but just as importantly, my granddaughter Violet was there. She's 8 years old. This was her first movie theater experience, seeing a adult, themed movie. And she loved it. She was just eating it up. I spent half the movie watching her reaction, and it was a glorious experience. So yeah, what can I say? This was what I needed. And so I'm happy to be here to be able to talk about it.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And keeping in mind that young audience actually might be useful as we discuss it to try to figure out, to try to triangulate, because we know the sides of a triangle, where this thing sits. So, Julia, we watched this last night in a packed house. So what are your opening? Yes,
not our own house. Yes.
So what are your thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Yeah, that was super fun. We went, first of all, we got there, and there are several Ghostbusters vehicles in our community. They were all parked outside with their lights on. That was super fun. And then you come down the way we enter, you come down this escalator, and there was a little kid with a what do you call the pack that
Proton pack.
the proton
That's what I
pack
call it. I don't know.
aiming her or their, I don't know if it was a her or him, but anyway, their proton weapon at us as we came down the escalator. So it's
Love
like,
it.
don't shoot, I'm not a ghost. So that was great right from the beginning. And then we brought our kids, and it was really fun. I was sitting next to my oldest, and she and I are both like to geek out about stuff. So we both kept saying the same thing at the same time. Like we'd be like, J.K. Simmons or sexiest man alive, like whatever, just like various things that we were just saying. But anyway, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great fun. I just loved it. I love the sentimentality of seeing the original cast come on. Everybody applauded for that. I love Paul Rudd so much. I've always loved Paul Rudd. I've loved Paul Rudd since Clueless. I don't know him from Halloween 6. I know him from Clueless. I would have gone with, we know him from Clueless.
It's the same summer. Not for nothing,
Exactly.
but that was the
Yeah,
same summer.
there you
Okay,
go.
but Julia, the people who listen to this podcast, who do you think they know him from?
Maybe Ant-Man? I don't know. You might know.
Probably
Anyway.
Halloween 6. Like I would gamble on that. I would take that bet.
Anyway, so I really loved that. I thought it was fun. The kids were great. I just everything. I just really enjoyed it. There was nothing that I was like, disappointed about or anything. So it was really fun.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And by the way, it was really neat to have a crowd that was really into it and was clapping and cheering and I mean, it was the kind of enthusiastic crowd that you want.
Yeah,
Who are like
clapping.
into it and just very. It was a lot of people really happy to be at the movies. That was neat. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I really liked it. I was maybe a little bit skeptical because just I'd heard, I have friends who are film critics, and I not no offense to them, but I generally don't read reviews beforehand. I try to go into a movie with as little knowledge of, if I can avoid trailers, I even do a lot of times, especially if it's a movie I know I'm going to see. Like this, I'm going to go see it. It's a movie, hands down, I'm going to go see Ghostbusters. Like that's going to be a thing. I'm still, sometimes reticent to. I'm very picky now about what movies I go to, just because we're not out of the woods yet here in Austin, and I still had my reservations. Like, oh, should I go? But I want to do this. I want to do the podcast. I really enjoyed it. I find it fascinating. I do think that some people who this wasn't their favorite film, a lot of people enjoy the kind of more scrappy Ghostbusters, like the original, where it shouldn't have worked and it did, and they went as kids to, oh wow, these are all these comedians that I love and I've seen their movies, and now they're busting ghosts. What's that's going to be? What will that be like?
That's a good point. Yeah,
I found it to be interesting because to me it had a lot of Goonies and E.T. in it, and perhaps a little less original Ghostbusters. But as I was watching it, I don't have a problem with that, I guess. And again, I don't care if people call me, oh, you're not this good of a fan or that good of a fan, because I get the same thing no matter what. I like what I like. I've had, oh, you're not this amount of film buff or this amount of metalhead or whatever. And I'm an adult now, so I don't care. Whatever, man.
Well,
I get to approach media however I want, and I actually really enjoy this movie. There's nobody in the right mind is going to say I am not a huge fan of Ghostbusters. Maybe not as much as Drew, but
I'm giving you a pass,
close.
though. As the apparent Ghostmaster General, I'm giving you a pass.
That's great. I love that term.
I've enjoyed things about all the Ghostbusters movies. I mean, and anybody who spent any amount of time watching cable in the 80s, especially, has seen Ghostbusters like 1 quadrillion times, and 1 and 2 is all the time it was on, and that was great. I mean, it was one of those where it's on, you just kind of leave it on, like, oh, you're flipping the channel, Ghostbusters is on, looks like I'm watching Ghostbusters now. And I really enjoyed. I actually really enjoyed the cast. I like the way it unfolded. I get why people maybe didn't like it as much, or maybe wanted more of the comedy or the kind of rougher, scrappy version of Ghostbusters. Like, I totally understand, and that's completely valid, but this worked for me, and looked great, sounded great. I'm maybe occasionally I agree a little bit, it leaned in on nostalgia a little bit hard, and we've seen it's hard because you've seen a lot of movies do that recently and kind of use that as a crutch, and so it's hard. If you're looking for that, that's what you're gonna find. But I'm gonna go back to, that's how you approach what you bring into the movie theater is what you bring, like that's your stuff, and I've been guilty of that. But for me, I just wanted to go see what the heck this Ghostbusters was gonna be, and I was probably more skeptical than certainly than Drew, and I came out entertained, and I think that what everybody's talked about before, I agree with all of that in various degrees, and I think it's going to be that's going to be a touchstone for a lot of kids. Like, this is their Ghostbusters now, and they may or may not have been in on all the nostalgia parts. So if it works for them, who am I to complain?
Yeah. So my very first thought, and then let's get into the drink, because I'm not going to bother you with a full thought. But my thought was this word that Roger Ebert used, which was cocoloris, which I'm not even certain if he knew the right word to use, but I'm just going to take his word for it that was the word. And it referred to this effect in the movies of flickering lights playing on the character that's like looking over something as big lights flicker and wind like blows, but there's always that sort of that, close encounters kind of effect of just the blazing lights and the person spying and all that stuff. And it's this high adventure concept that I recognize instantly in a movie where I like any movie where that happens, where people are looking over and there's stuff flickering at them and everybody's all amazed. The Goonies is like that. This is like that. And the Indiana Jones movies relied on stuff like that. So this movie totally worked for me. But I'll save the rest. I know that there are plenty of reviewers, including at RogerEbert.com, who are not happy with this film, and I don't know. I think people are inured to joy, so we'll talk about that. So, all right, we have a couple of drinks that people, because we are joined by the
representative,
the illustrious David of the Monster Movie Happy Hour. We have some drinks to discuss. So, who wants to go first? I know that Julia, you had a recipe that you did, and David, you have maybe the same recipe, maybe a different recipe. I don't know.
I don't think it's the same. Mine
Okay.
is very simple. I'll just say it's super simple. I got it off of a website called the Spruce Eats, and the website calls it the Ghostbuster cocktail. That's all, the Ghostbuster drink. I said maybe it could be the Gozer. And Jason's like wasn't happy with that, so he thinks it should be called the Gozer Dozer. I don't know.
Yes.
Anyway, it is super simple and dangerously delicious because it is just equal parts peach schnapps and melon liqueur, like Midori, and a couple of drops of Irish cream, and just to give it that sort of milky, ectoplasmic look to it. But it's really good and just super easy. Just shake it up in a shaker.
And it doesn't, considering it's only alcoholic drinks in this thing, it doesn't really taste like a heavily alcoholic drink.
Fruity.
You could drink a heck of a
melon.
lot of this.
I know.
You could really knock this thing back. Yeah.
That's the danger in it.
That's the danger.
You two can be seeing ghosts very soon.
Exactly.
Without even knowing how much you've imbibed.
Well, I was telling Julia, she was like, "Well, be careful with that." And I said, I'm a very big person, like physically, so I can handle a lot of alcohol. I said, Adam Foshko and I wrote a book about alcohol. We drank our way up and down California. It didn't bother us in the slightest. And I was like, luckily, we don't have any like 30 Rock style smash cuts to anything, because this is real life.
Yeah, we did fine. And I was like, have you checked make sure you don't have a record in California that you're like a warrant for your arrest? That you were like, sure, officer, we're staying in the state.
I just love the idea of Jason trying to pass it off as research for a project.
Yes.
No, seriously, we're researching this.
Yeah, our accountant didn't blink twice at him writing off a bunch of bars.
That's true. Yeah. David, what do you got?
I have a pretty simple cocktail as well, and it was inspired by the very one that Julia talked about. And I was forced to do this because I was missing the peach schnapps. Although, quite frankly, I probably could have went with, but I came up with something that, thankfully, Drew came up with a really I think, a kind of a cool name for it. This is
Oh,
the
you're welcome.
yeah, well done. The Destructor cocktail. And so this is essentially 1.5 ounces of peach brandy as opposed to peach schnapps, 1.5 ounces of orange juice. So it's not all alcohol. And then a half a tablespoon of blue curacao. And so that curacao mixed with the orange juice gives you that green, the bluish green. And just shake it with ice, strain into your cocktail glass, and enjoy responsibly, kids.
I think what you
Yes.
should do, David, is put up this episode.
Mhm.
Also, if you're interested, you don't have to, but I mean, you put it up that way. You can also have an excuse to run the drink recipes.
Yeah,
And we'll do that as well.
absolutely. Oh yeah, I fully intend to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much fun not to.
All right.
I
yeah.
have my mocktail
Aha.
that I have.
Sorry, I was watching the video.
created.
I apologize. Yes,
It
go
is
ahead.
okay. It is okay. So I have what I am calling "There is no booze, only Zool," because it is for teetotalers like me.
Damn fine
And-
name.
There is
Thank
no
you, thank
booze,
you.
Only Zool. I like it.
You have 1 inch grated ginger, 1 inch grated cucumber, then you juice half a lime. You should get 6 mint leaves, then a cup of sparkling water. I used orange sparkling water, just FYI, and wait, I did, but any sparkling water will do. Then a cup of ginger ale or ginger beer. So the instructions, very simple. You mix the ginger, cucumber, and lime in a bowl, throw in the mint leaves after clapping them together. Then you strain the mixture into a glass and add ice. Top it off with the ginger beer and sparkling water. And if you want, garnish it with something nice and green, like some lime or whatever to keep it looking nice and ghostly. And this you can drink as much as you want and not get shit faced, because it's
Right.
for boring old stodgy non-drink like myself, but
Yeah.
something you can still feel classy while you're drinking it.
That sounds
Why-
great.
Why do you clap them together? I'm curious.
To release
leaves.
the scent of the mint leaf, and
Oh, interesting.
that's coming from Jamie. I wouldn't have thought of that in my end. Jamie used to bartend.
No kidding.
Oh, that's interesting.
Anytime the Jurassic Park themed cocktail that I came up with for Monster Movie Happy Hour,
Yes,
she was
I remember
heavily,
very well.
that one's
Yes.
really good, and she was
Yeah.
90% of that was her. So
was awesome.
so I got some help from her for this science project as well.
There is no booze, only Zool.
Only Zool.
Great name, and it sounds like it would be a very refreshing drink as well.
It's tart but also sweet, and I think it would be a better summer drink. Of course, now we're in fall.
Sure.
But we needed a Ghostbusters themed drink, and I think I rose to the occasion. So
that's nice.
Which, by the way, there should be a Monster Movie Happy Hour cocktail book at some point.
Oh
It's
dear.
a wonderful idea. Yeah.
Agreed.
You could do that on a heartbeat. That's a very good idea.
Uh,
All right.
I'll pass
Jason
that
can help
on.
you put together. He's done some boozy books.
Just a bit, huh? Yeah.
You're welcome. I will donate gladly the 2 mocktails too.
We will take them gladly, and thank you.
Okay, so there's a lot of places we could start, but starting just with a random thing that I thought was the most obvious piece about this when this film begins. It begins with a flashback, or rather, it begins at one point in the not so distant past and then leaps forward. But the main thing is the film Ghostbusters Afterlife opens letting us know that it's taking place in the country. And 3 films. We've had 3 Ghostbusters movie, one in an alternate version of the universe, but they're all New York. They're all like deeply, deeply urban, and this is totally different. So I'm curious, like, that seems like a big risk, that's a big choice, as Tony is very fond of pointing out. He goes, this characterization, this idea, this setting is certainly a choice, and this one is a big choice. anybody can jump in here. I'm just really curious, like what you thought about putting a Ghostbusters movie in the country.
You know, of all the choices that they made, this was the thing that I was the most skeptical about, because when I think of Ghostbusters, I think of something that is very quintessentially New York. And I thought,
Yeah.
if you were going to move it to the country, I thought it should at least be in like Hudson Valley.
Right.
Because if nothing else, the Hudson Valley is rife with ghost stories. Like you think of like the Headless Horseman,
Sure.
of course, and all these other things. And I just thought, well, at least that's keeping it still in New York.
Yeah.
However, actually, I think the sort of isolation of this like fictional version of Oklahoma ended up working. Like I think it kind of gave it a I don't know, like a rustic, dare I say at times, sort of almost leaning into like a farm gothic kind of feel. And, certainly could have done that in the Hudson Valley, but by moving them so far away from New York, it makes them feel that they're further away from help.
Yeah.
Or it really puts the kids on their own. And if there's one thing that this movie, I think, did better, unarguably did better than the 2016 Ghostbusters, is this movie leans more into the horror elements of Ghostbusters. And I think that, the choice to move it into a small town and the choice to move it completely out of the state of New York kind of lended itself well to that.
It struck me as it's such a big choice. It's such a big like risk that it's like how, in the world of fanfic where everything's cheap, you can just say, okay, this is a special episode that takes place, takes place at the North Pole, takes place in, in Oklahoma. You can just completely mess it up. It's a huge risk, but I actually enjoyed it. I kind of knew that there was no way they were going to spend the rest of reality here. So at the end of this film, spoilers, once again, warning, seriously, spoilers. It appears that everybody's going to relocate back to New York. But, it was for me, I actually did enjoy it because we have had 3 films already, so it did have that effect of going, oh well, this is a way that we haven't seen Ghostbusters before. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I thought it was really interesting to kind of move it to a small town. It also made me curious in retrospect how much there's still the same tropes of, hey, we're in this small town, there's not that many teenagers, or we all have to, the school is small.
Yeah.
What do you do? But also now with the internet, and it did make me wonder because when I grew up in a small town, everything was, all the trends waited a long time to kind of reach there. And then things kind of stuck around longer than maybe they should. Like I remember going to college and catching crap because I had tight rolled my pants still, which is awful. Ridiculous. But with the internet now, I'm guessing that that's probably not the same case, and I'm curious about that. But the choices they made, and like the musical choices they made when they're kind of, hey, let's go hang out and be in this small town and have this clique, and it's the summer, so you're not getting the same like, oh no, I have to only one of the kids is going to summer school, so you do have the school element, and then the rest is trying to fit in a different way. So it's more of a fitting in. You have to figure out, well, am I going to hang out with kids my age or not, because we're still out in the middle of this farmhouse. And I can relate to that as well, because when I visited my grandparents every summer, and I was out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't make that many friends every summer. Honestly, it was me and horror movies and Nintendo pretty much. that was my summers, and whatever movies I could go to. So I had a different kind of experience, but it was interesting to see how all these people, I mean, yeah, maybe it's a little bit heavy-handed that there's a kid who has a podcast and his name is Podcast, and
I loved that kid though.
But no,
what's
so great.
cute.
I mean, I think it's, again, that leads to the kind of, it felt a little bit more Goonies ET than it did Ghostbusters franchise to me, other than all the stuff that comes in as it's a Ghostbusters movies, no doubt, but the pacing and the way it tells the story felt a little bit more Spielberg in that sense. And I think that's kind of neat. But yeah, I mean, putting it out in the middle of nowhere. But I think that's interesting too, because we can say that there's probably ghosts everywhere. So seeing, well, what are these ghosts? But they still tie it back. I mean,
they come up with a
Selenium
fiction for
mine
why.
goes to like the Shandor part of it. When you first see like a Shandor mine, it's like, oh, okay, I recognize that, and it leads to more than nostalgia. But that's kind of interesting to see how these occult things. It kind of also reminded me. This is super geeky, but there's a RPG called Beyond the Supernatural, and I like that, but. I used to collect RPGs as well, just because they were source books that had you would have a lot of subject matter in them, so this one's all about the occult and tied back to, it was a horror RPG, and it had there's ley lines here, and there's this stuff in the US, and there's this other stuff in Britain, and etc. And so it kind of had that feel as well. Like you still have supernatural things going on all over the US if you look for them. I thought that was kind of cool. That kind of made that was a touchstone for me. Probably I'm one of the very few people that even kind of put that together, but as I was watching it kind of felt like that.
David, were you going to say something? Sorry.
I was simply going to say that I enjoyed the first, second, and third installment of Ghostbusters, all of which took place in New York. So I actually welcome the change of environment. It just seemed to me that, it maybe would benefit from shifting.
It's a way to mix it up, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it turns out in a really big way, and yet, as we discover, it immediately ties right back to the first one. So I enjoyed it, and I'm a sucker for seeing some of those big open vistas.
Yeah.
And sort of that sense of isolation, the big sky, and I mean the big sort of creepy mountain was. I mean, I've never been to Oklahoma, but for better or worse, this is now my image of what it must look like everywhere throughout the state.
As a Texan, I am obligated to diss Oklahoma at every chance I can, but
I have to tell you, I'm a Longhorn, and there's it's a typical Longhorn thing. It's like the person will go, "What time is it? Oklahoma, whatever time it is." Like Oklahoma still sucks.
Yes.
Oh God.
That's like the answer every time.
What did in fact look like Oklahoma, for what it's worth.
Okay.
But
I enjoyed it, and I love anything that takes place in a small town. Having grown up in a relatively small town, that's my that's my thing. Because really good and really bad things can happen there. Everybody knows everybody's business.
Right.
And it's perfect storytelling locale.
I think there's a great deal of fiction going on, and it suits me just fine. By moving it to Oklahoma, they don't just move to Oklahoma, and they make some feints towards the existence of the internet. The kid has a podcast, and that allows them to do running jokes about that. Other than that, they don't go to Oklahoma. They go to Oklahoma in 1986. I mean, this is... Seriously, they've set it up so that cell phones don't work in this town.
Yeah.
And there are no chain stores, none. There's no Hardee's. Everybody's hanging out. There's
Walmart. There's Walmart.
There is a Walmart, and I have to tell you that is the most realistic thing in this place.
Oh, no doubt.
This
that's actually the first thing I said to Jamie when we were talking about it when we left. I was like, I'm torn because that's pretty blatant product placement, but. In my hometown, admittedly, this is Texas, not Oklahoma, but we only had one store, and it was fucking Walmart.
The desolate downtown, which is that one drag that he drives down and they tear up, and then there's a Walmart that is literally the size of Rhode Island. I mean, this just huge thing
in my summers though, Hearn, Texas got a Walmart. It was one of the few Walmarts, one of the early Walmarts that closed.
Oh, really?
For various reasons.
That's shocking.
The town actually is still recovering from that. Drove almost everybody out of business. Certainly most pharmacies. Almost drove my grandfather, who had a TV repair shop. Luckily, he diversified, but you could buy a cheap TV down the street, and it was going to break. And people came back to him. But the Walmart coming and then closing in that town was just devastating, just ripped
Yeah.
through it. By the time that people could, because by the time it left, rents were high, people couldn't even, family businesses had closed, etc. So, but it is like you'll have all of these towns, and the Walmart has supplanted, even
Yeah.
I'm surprised there was a local grocery store, the Brookshire Brothers, that was there that still survived. And but that was it picked up after the Walmart left. So yeah, but most of the time that is one of the very few places. And how
Yeah,
can
and there's
you know
no
when you're
politics
of a
to this
fixed
movie at
income?
all. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
when
no
you're
comment
fixed
on that.
income, how
Yeah.
can you do anything else but go to Walmart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The deals are all there.
I have a couple things. One is that Jason has an actual farm in Oklahoma, or his family does, so he probably feels more strongly about any of these things. But yes, the Walmart is always the thing. And it was funny about when we traveled to Terlingua once. We had a waitress or at the Starlight Diner, and she said that she lived in a teepee and that the closest Walmart was 200 miles away. That tells you how small freaking Terlingua is, because every
Yeah.
small town
Wow.
has a Walmart.
Well,
But she was like,
Terlingua, literally a
yeah,
ghost town. I mean, I'm
yeah,
not even sure.
so tiny.
Yeah, I guess TP is about as good as it, because I don't think they have plumbing in Terlingua. I
Well,
mean, it's
no, I'm sure they do, because they do at the cafe. But anyway,
oh,
the
that's
point
right, the
is that,
cafe works.
yeah.
Yes.
But the point is that that the fact that was how small that town was. The nearest Walmart was 200 miles away.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yes, that is a very typical thing. But I wanted to say that I agree with everything what David was saying about to me, the country, having grown up in the suburbs and partly the city. The country is scary. I find it scary. And so
Likewise.
I'm
Likewise.
always, so whenever I watch a movie with ghosts and whatever, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. You know,
Right.
like, of course there are ghosts in a
Right.
farmhouse. Why wouldn't there
Yep.
be?
Yep.
So as one thing I mentioned was that this small town, to me, there's a subtext in this entire movie of 80s sensibilities. I mentioned the brightly flickering lights, like out of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when they open with River Phoenix, and there's just so much going on. You guys mentioned the Goonies. I also think of that other,
Also, this is a little bit earlier than that, but also
huh,
a lot of Close Encounters of a Third
for sure,
Kind.
and
Right.
Explorers, which to name another random River Phoenix movie, and
Nice
you know,
call.
oh,
Yeah.
thanks. But I mean,
Making me
it's the
sad
same.
with these River Phoenix callbacks.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
no, I know. Bless us. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
but that the funny thing is, and of course Footloose, right, where the city boy goes into the country. So and in a sense, not quite, but in a sense, Lost Boys, because Jason Patrick is dragged into, although that's not the country, it's the it's the seaside, but it's still a tiny crappy town that he's not happy to be in. Um, I felt very much like I was watching an 80s movie that's that would have had River Phoenix in it, and I kind of loved it because, again, big choice. It's a big choice that just kind of says, you know what, we're going in our own direction. We're going to introduce a young, and not like young like 20 something, but young like teenager cast, and that's what and there's going to be, like in Goonies, we're going to have the helpful biology teacher, and all of that stuff. I really felt like I was watching an 80s movie, and I was well aware as I was watching it. I was like, your people are either going to really dig this or really feel betrayed. Like, this is just not at all what they expected, and they're going to be kind of ticked off. Like, hey, I rejected Ghostbusters 2016 for this, and I haven't even been
The
on Twitter
irony
to
of
find out.
that is that Ghostbusters 2016 is, for all the static about it, is much more structurally
Yeah,
like the original movie, because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
adults. The humor kind of raunchy.
they leave the university and they go do the thing.
Yeah, and
Yep. Yep.
this movie, it's funny, it's getting slammed for having too many callbacks from the original movie, but again, I really think it's different from the other three, and I think more power to it, because we already had 3 movies told that story. This one is going a little off script, and only a little. It still has a lot of the same story beats, because it's still a Ghostbusters movie, but I enjoyed the fact that they took a little, at least a little bit of a risk with it. Instead of playing it safe. I
We
think
should take this moment, Drew, to talk about first just the whole concept of fan service and what people expect, and this curious issue where fans of a film get upset if the film, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, I'm going to try to say this as honestly as I can. Fans of a film series get upset if the film actually gives them too many recognizable callbacks, which people call fan service. Like, what the hell is going on with all of that? You know, and
I because of the 2016 Ghostbusters, I kind of detached myself from being too actively involved in fandoms, and all, not just Ghostbusters fandom, like all of them, because like I find that you were just saying this, Jason, that can kind of become expectation can become the thief of joy. And I wanted to enjoy the 2016 movie, and I was kind of not allowed to because I was constantly having to justify my enjoyment of it. It's very difficult because I had a neighbor, he has since moved, who's also a Ghostbusters fan, and he hated that movie, and he needed to remind me how much he hated it every chance that he got, to the point of obnoxiousness. And I just, with this movie, and it seems like the fan culture seems to like this movie a little bit more, except that there's now like all these movie critics that seem like they film like they need to do a hit piece on it, and I don't understand either. Like, I think, like, look, either you enjoy these little Easter eggs and stuff, or you don't.
Right.
But like, when I see articles out there that are like, oh, because of this movie, they're like, oh, is nostalgia destroying cinema? I was like, you know what? No one was doing this when Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan came out. Like, or maybe they did, and I was just too young to remember. But
there wasn't the internet to tell you that.
That's a really good
thing.
point.
Is there's not as much navel gazing.
Yes,
because the internet. It's what I talked to Jason about this. Like, never in the world of the novel 1984. In the world of Orwell, where they have, it was the 5 minutes hate. 5 minutes, 50 minutes. Like,
it is. It's something like that, 5 minutes or whatever of hate.
If you choose to be part of that, there's no way Orwell could have seen. You can have a 24 hours hate, if you want. You can just constantly. And we get caught up. I mean, Rain calls me out for surfing like on my phone all the time. She's like, "Hey, can you be in the moment more? I don't think this is healthy for you," because she's concerned about how I deal with that and how much internet I'm exposed to. And part of it's keeping up with a number of things, bands, media, all of that. And that's the thing, is you can get caught up depending on where you look and feel that. I'm with Drew. I've kind of taken a step back where I can and just said, you know what? I've never been quote unquote cool in the sense that's usually used. And nobody liked, or very few people liked what I liked where I lived at any given time, or I was never, and I've made peace with that, and I'm kind of okay with just going into a theater and liking something. And I get where a lot of people maybe do kind of feel like it should have been a comedy, or there's a lot of nostalgia here, and it is, it was fine, like, hey, this is a huge Easter egg hunt if you want to do that. And I get where that, for a lot of people, that's not what they wanted, and I think it leans in. This is coming from a person who, like, now I'm watching Cowboy Bebop, and I'm kind of struggling with it because I was a big fan of the original, and I don't want to get into it here, but like, I feel like I built up a lot, and it does some things that I like, and other things I'm like, oh. But depending on your fandom and what you bring to it, I think that I think that those criticisms are valid. But
okay, but
I think that that didn't take away in this case. And I've seen stuff where I went, oh man, you didn't need to have a callback. Like, it didn't, to me, feel as wink nod as some nostalgia movies, and
obnoxious. You're talking about
obnoxious. Like, hey, I'm gonna say this thing. That's the catchphrase. Haha. It didn't feel like that to me, and I get maybe some other people did, but I personally didn't find that to be the same thing. It does it a little bit here and there. I like I said, I get it, but it didn't bother me in the same way that some other movies that lean in a little bit more do.
I want to say thing though, like, we do need to get past like there's like this presumption that filmmakers, when they take a beloved property, like they let's take your example. Like, this is something else I like if I got to do anything to do with Friday the 13th, if I got to do my version of a Friday the 13th sequel, I would hope that I wouldn't have to feel beholden to like all the people that would most likely nitpick the hell out of that. And when I see, back 5 years ago, when I saw like people going like, when Paul Feig was like, well, I'm proud of the film I made, and there would be people on the internet going, well, how dare you be proud of the film you made? And then now you have people saying to Jason Reitman like, oh, you were only allowed to make this movie because you're Ivan Reitman's son. Never mind the fact this is the guy that made Thank You for Smoking and Juno, which are both very well regarded films.
Right.
Like, it's absurd to think that, like, let people do their version. Let people tell their story. And I'm not saying you don't have to like this. Like, I still bowed out, like I'm a hypocrite. Like, I still haven't seen Rise of Skywalker because the moment I learned that they were bringing back Palpatine, I was like, well, that's the laziest thing I've ever heard. And yet when Gozer pops up in this one, I clapped like, 10-year-old and jumped up and down in my chair. So like, maybe I'm a hypocrite, but the point is like, I made the choice of saying, oh, well, that third Star Wars movie doesn't sound like something that I will enjoy, so I'm just going to bow out, and I don't go online and piss and moan about it.
Well, that's the great thing is you don't have to. Right.
You don't.
I apologize. I interrupted.
Well, I'd say you don't have to actually like publicly gouge just because you can go on Twitter and send something to Jason Reitman or Paul Feig or whoever. You shouldn't. Like, you don't have to. You can still not like something.
Well, the really weird thing to me is two of those thoughts. One is that movies are actually, even though movies are deeply important to me, they're actually not deeply important, period. So if I skip a film, the world doesn't stop turning. It doesn't matter. If I don't watch the second or third film in a trilogy, nobody gives a shit. It doesn't matter. It really, and there will be another big movie next week. And so it's super weird to me how people feel, and I'm actually trying to have great empathy for them, because I think there's some way that we get intoxicated into thinking this, like that you're my friend and we're on Twitter and I see you say, boy, I really loved the remake of Suspiria. And for some reason, I believe morally that I have to go, well, yeah, but I wasn't crazy about casting the old guy with Tilda Swinton, like, who gives a fuck? It's none of my business whether you like this movie. You don't need me to like weigh in.
And I don't understand why Ghostbusters of all things has become the crystallization of this in our culture.
I mean, of all things, it should be, of all things, you would hope that fans of this particular genre would be just so understanding and forgiving and welcoming of anybody who expresses any interest in it, instead of having to, quite frankly, rain on everybody's parade every time you turn around.
I mean, I know it's hard to make another movie that's in the same series as the greatest film that was ever committed to celluloid.
By the way, we must acknowledge. Every time I do this, I think it's good to acknowledge the irony of us saying, "Well, film matters this much," or not on a podcast full of talking about film and how much it means to us.
On our no less than our
the irony
350-second numbered episode.
Right.
Yes.
Because obviously you give no thought to movies whatsoever.
And talking about them and critiquing them, like
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
they know. By the way, I'm a film critic.
Yeah, you can't please everyone, and so just please yourself. Anyway,
Ricky
but
Nelson
we should move on to the
Nice.
next topic. Because we already
okay.
have
Yes,
been
indeed.
here
Well,
about
yeah, but what I love is that what I think makes our conversation special, if I may be so bold, is that sometimes we'll skip the obvious thing and go straight into like what I regard as thesis questions, and it's kind of cool.
It's just that to me, the whole thing of people on the internet are going to bitch about stuff. It's like, yeah, okay.
Okay, fair.
It is
Totally
true.
fair. You're right. Point made. So I want to turn to we talked a little bit already about young versus old, so we can return that as we like. And we talked about politicization, but politicization. I need to hit all of the syllables in that word. But effects. So there was a very interesting thing going on here. And I said, like, early when Julie and I were married, I said, someday we're
A
going to go to the movies.
long time ago.
A while back.
I'm just looking at Julia's face as she says that.
Yes. So picture it. Julie and I are young law students coming out of Reality Bites and like getting an orange Julius or doing whatever the hell it is.
I've never had an orange Julius
Okay,
in my life.
I'm sorry. Let
Not
me
ever.
just relish that moment.
I've never had an orange. I don't know what an orange Julius even
We
tastes
come
like.
out of Reality Bites and we get a Kung Pao chicken and a Mugu Gai pan. And beautiful downtown Silver Spring, the old one, not the way it is now. And God, that's the most obnoxious thing I ever. Anyway, but the point is, I remember saying distinctly, someday they're going to make a movie, and it's going to have Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe, and they're just going to be in it. They're going to be in this movie. It's going to be like a new Sam Spade mystery, and Marilyn Monroe's going to be there, and Peter Lorre, what the hell, and maybe Peter Cushing and John Ritter. And you just put them all into a movie, and you're going to be able to do that electronically. And I knew it would happen someday, but I really wasn't sure when. And I think we're about there. We are about there because
I have
Drew, talk about this.
I have extraordinarily mixed feelings about that because I do think the essence of an actor and the specialness that they bring to something cannot be turned into an effect. That being said, what they did in this movie, apparently somehow they manipulated footage of Harold Ramis from the original two films. But it worked because, first of all, he didn't speak. He just reacted to things.
Yeah, that was big.
Yeah, that was big. Absolutely.
But
and he's see-through and flickery.
Yeah,
so
I think it doesn't it doesn't have the uncanny valley thing that the Peter
because you don't even have to worry
Cushing-
about the flesh color because it's like green.
Yeah,
and the eyes
like
not looking quite right.
Yeah, the Peter Cushing in Rogue One was creepy. Like this because and because you don't fully see him until the end of the movie, but he's there as a quote unquote character throughout the film, like interacting with his granddaughter. There's like a through line that it feels earned, rather than just like, oh, look it's Forrest Gump all over again. Look at what we can do with
I forgot about that. Yeah, they had. I was thinking. I apologize. I was actually thinking of Force Ghost. I was thinking of Anakin showing up at the end and waving, with Yoda at the big,
How is that Force Ghost?
The big Ewok. They're Force Ghosts.
Force Ghost.
Not
Force.
Forrest Ghost is the new movie.
Forrest Gump to Forrest Ghost. I thought you were saying Forrest Ghost.
I haven't seen that version.
Anyway,
they're
at the big.
Dead now.
They're at the big Ewok party, and Anakin waves because he's behind the cauldron or whatever the hell it is. Anyway,
I totally get what Drew was saying because I really enjoyed what they did with Egon's character here, but it did make it much easier to accept because of the nature of his appearance in the movie at this point in the story. And so I'm not gonna lie, I folks, I take a little white pill every morning that keeps me from crying like a baby every day. But at this moment in the movie, I started to get that hitching in the chest and everything. And keep in mind, I'm sitting right next to my granddaughter. I mean, I adore my grandkids, but wow, Violet's right next to me. It hit me like a brick right in the head. It was wonderful.
Weeping.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, and it felt good. It felt good. It felt necessary. So I'm sorry, Drew. I didn't mean to step into what you were saying.
No,
but it hit me at a very personal level, and I was
especially if you were with your granddaughter.
Happy to see it. I sort of needed it there.
Well, also when you take into the account like the life sort of contentious breakup of a friendship that happened between Harold Ramis and Bill Murray, the fact that
Yes.
this happens on screen, you actually get all 4 original Ghostbusters back in a form. Like, like it's I guess you could call that fan service, but it's fan service that worked for me because I got misty-eyed.
Yeah.
I absolutely did.
Yeah,
And
I
I think
agree.
there's a cynicism on the internet where stuff that plucks at the heartstrings, and has a sentiment to it, will tend to, people are just too cool for school for that.
Yeah.
And which is dumb, And it's funny, I'm saying that as a Gen Xer, and we're supposed to be known for our cynicism, our jadedness. But
well, the truth of the matter is, every day we get a little bit older, and every day the things around us, the people around us, become that much more precious.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to be pretty hard inside, pretty dead inside, not to eventually feel that. So I think it's significant that I think all 5 of us felt it at that moment.
Mm-hmm. I was totally.
I did not expect it to work as well as it did.
Exactly.
I was
Exactly.
very skeptical when they kind of, this is coming.
Yeah.
And I've seen it work well, and I've seen it really not work well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised. I thought it was a really touching moment. I think it worked in the narrative of family being the core of this, which I was surprised that worked as well as it did. It's really easy to be cynical, and I again, it's whatever you feel. I'm by no means, I'm not telling everybody you have to like this movie or else you hate family or whatever, which is, what happens a lot on the internet. Like, I like pancakes. Why don't you like waffles?
Why do you hate America so much?
What?
Yeah.
No, I just said I like waffles as well. You didn't say that. So like that tends to happen, and that's just the thing. But I did not expect it. By the way, on a side note, Jason, you're kind of, hey, you're going to see Humphrey Bogart, etc. There's a really good movie from 2013 called The Congress.
Okay.
That deals with I think it's Robin Wright basically selling in this movie, selling all future, basically her being. Like, and a bunch of actors are going through this. It gets very artsy. There's a lot of animation, but it deals a lot with what do you do when you sell, when you're no longer the person that you were, especially as an actor or actress, because that's the premise. That's what starts the premise, and it goes a lot of different directions. But basically, in a world where now somebody owns your likeness forever, and then what is forever? And I think that was a really interesting. It's not a movie I think for everyone.
That sounds interesting, though.
Artsy,
I've got to check that out.
I do recommend checking it out.
No, I mean,
but it kind of deals with a lot of that. What is a person, especially if you're on screen? We do have here's a concert where we're going to project this person as a huge hologram.
Right, Prince. They did that at the Super Bowl, right? Yeah.
Well, and you currently have the performers of ABBA appearing as avatars of themselves, right now, which is rather curious.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to be said. I am usually, again, very skeptical, very cynical of this sort of thing. But for whatever reason, the way it was done and how it worked out here, it felt like it was actually a really cool moment.
It's also not completely saccharine because of the relationship with Egon apparently had with his daughter.
Right.
It doesn't gloss over that his obsessive nature caused problems with his personal relationships, which is completely believable. Like if you take these characters out of because the comedy in this movie is much more naturalistic, sort of light comedy, which I actually always say that I feel like is closer to the way that humans actually behave than your typical drama.
Tell me more about that. So I didn't understand that point.
Okay, if you were like I talked about this a lot when the Orville first came on, is that I didn't feel like everybody was like, oh, this is a spoof of Star Trek, and I was like, no, it's not a spoof of Star Trek. It's Star Trek if it was populated by real people. Because people behave more how they do in these sort of, not full on slapstick comedy, not full on, weirdo, bizarre sort of Marx Brothers type comedy, but like that sort of like veneer of like people cracking jokes under pressure or occasionally saying an off-color thing, that's the way people behave. Like people don't behave in such a way where they're constantly dramatic or they're constantly browbeat. People behave in a manner I find very closer to this movie. So if you were to take the characters from the original movie and then sort of dial back the humor just a tad to where you have to look at them as real people, and now thinking like, okay, Egon had a life outside of being a Ghostbuster and he had a family and everything, like he probably would be a difficult person to know because of, you know, his eccentricities, you know, the way he is sort of introverted and everything. So it could see why he might not be, you know, the easiest person to get along with some of the time.
It made absolutely perfect sense.
This is the man who's going to drill a hole in his head.
Exactly.
So like,
then that would have worked if you would have. You know.
There's only two things that I did kind of question. One of them is just because it's, you know, Harold Ramis is dead, so you have to do what you have to do to have the plot, which is I don't quite buy that Ray, if Egon said, hey, Gozer is coming back and he's coming, Gozer is going to come back in this Oklahoma town, I don't know that I don't buy that Ray wouldn't believe him. Like, I don't 100% buy that, but Harold Ramis is dead. You do what you got to do. The other
I get that. Yeah, that makes sense. So can somebody recap real quick, like what happened with Egon in this universe? Is apparently after the Ghostbusters kind of closed down, Egon stole all the stuff and went to Oklahoma. Why? What's the deal?
Yeah, so first of all, we don't know at what point he has this daughter. Maybe it's before the original Ghostbusters, probably. But anyway, but somehow he abandoned her and her mother at some point. And then I guess he's in New York ghostbusting. And then they kind of fall apart when apparently Robert De Niro buys up Tribeca, which I thought was kind of funny. You know, for reasons they go their separate ways and they grow apart. But anyway, he ends up going to Oklahoma and buying this farm where all this activity is going on, and finding that the next, and I'm probably mixing things up, but there's a mine in the town, and the mine has all these like carvings in it that indicate different dates. And apparently this year is the next big event, and he's preparing for it, and there's all this activity going on. And so he's creating like the world's biggest ghost trap at the farm, farming the dirt, basically. It's kind of, And so but people don't believe him about all this.
The dirt farmer.
So he turned his back on or really they turned their back on him because he told them, hey, there's the, you know, the big apocalypse is going to happen here in the center of America. They didn't believe him. And maybe we can imagine that the evil forces still underground in New York might have been working some kind of mojo on the other guys so that they were inclined not to believe.
And you know what? They might just...
You're blaming Vigo the Carpenter, Jason?
Yes, indeed.
You know what? They just might have been getting tired, too.
Yeah.
The other
Especially
question,
Bill Murray, man, he hates this job now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The other question that I have though about Egon, and you know, you may have just answered it, Julia, is I was actually having the same conversation with David Balls over on Twitter earlier today. Is that if Carrie Coon's his daughter, because like that's basically the only woman that the fan base could imagine Egon hooking up with. Who the hell is this kid's? Who the hell is
the
Carrie
mother?
Coon's
Yeah,
mom?
it has to be that he had her before he went to New York, because otherwise it would have to be Annie Potts, and what Annie Potts like gave her up, and then now like I really fully expected there to be a scene where she's like, okay, I'm actually your birth mother or something.
Right.
I don't know, but even
If
though it would be
we're
weird.
going off of the age of the actress, they never
Yeah,
state
it has
the
to be
age
that
of the
he had her
character.
before.
Because Carrie Coons is 40 years old, so she's a little old to be Annie Potts' kid. So
Right, yeah. So he had to have abandoned her to go to New York.
I just sort of imagine that it happened shortly after what we saw in the first and
this is going to keep me. This is going to keep me up at night.
We also
I don't know. We're all doing the
sometimes
math
people
right
say stay out of our lives, don't call, don't text, don't
Yeah.
be a part, get lost. And so that would explain him keeping pictures of her and doing all this stuff at it. Well, look, we have to come up with a fiction here because this kid has to exist, and we have to come up
Exactly.
with it. But
Well, there could be another
know,
movie where she talks to her mom, like what happened here, and the mom actually tells her. I don't know.
Gozer
But I do
threatened
think it happened
me.
before.
Vigo the Carpathian said, "Don't let Egon be around."
No,
I mean, there's
the thing I did like though about the brief bit that, and I'm jumping around, admittedly,
please,
but I
we're
want
just
to
doing the
say
big
this while I'm
topics here.
thinking it. Yeah, I want to say
Yeah.
this while I'm still thinking about it. I did kind of like the way Annie Potts played it. That you know, she was still that she was taking care of Egon. She was really the
Yes.
only one
Yes.
that kind of believed the way it's never implicitly stated, but it seems like this was kind of an unrequited love. And you know, I found that an interesting choice on her part as an actress, because she
She
could have
seems
played
to
it
have basically
any
been
other
his
way.
life partner, but like not
Yeah.
as non-sexual life partner.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Tony, you said you had a question for me?
So I have, and this is totally on a different topic. So one of the other kind of nostalgia bits, and I want to ask you as a diehard fan.
Yeah.
So original Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is because of a slip up, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, why'd you think of that, right? Why do you think we get Stay Puft Marshmallow Man here?
Oh
When
my God, they're
there's
so
no,
cute.
I mean, it was a funny
The
bit.
comic
In
book,
my
the
opinion,
comic
I was
book says
expecting
the
like
comic book
some
has
Gremlins
an answer
homage.
for you.
like
The
I was
Ghostbusters
expecting some
comic book
Minions
series
crap.
has an answer for you. Is
Okay,
What is
that
it? What is it?
it's that Gozer until the cycle is restarted, which what Gozer is attempting to do here, and someone chooses a new form, Gozer is going to keep having to manifest as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So like, yeah, so comic books answered your question for you.
Nice. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It was just one of those like, huh?
They
'cause
didn't.
I think
They
it's a
didn't
funny
give
bit,
us
and I expected
Slimer.
it to
They
be
had to give us
cloying.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I expected it to be cloying and kind of annoying, and it was actually like pretty funny, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, they gave us Muncher, voiced by
Josh Gad. Yeah.
Josh. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
thought that was but I was curious because it was kind of like, well, why, distance from New York, distance from anyone else who would possibly thought of and manifested a Stay Puft Marshmallow, other than they're of course sold in Walmart.
Of course.
Why would there be this thing that was a very New York thing, and now I know. So
I love though the brand that Stay Puft Marshmallows are every, like there's even like a mural advertisement.
Like a
Absolutely.
classic old one, which
Yeah, yeah,
proves that
yeah.
Ghostbusters is not in our universe. That it's its own
and
universe with its
calling
own
back to
brand.
the conversation from earlier about the Easter eggs, I'm a sucker for Easter eggs. I'll actually watch 20, 30, 40-minute YouTube videos of
She does.
nerds telling me
I've
all the
never
Easter eggs.
seen, honestly, a bigger
I-
YouTube Easter egg nerd.
We have independent
Yes.
confirmation from Jason on this.
Yes.
And so so for me, watching the little Stay Puft Marshmallow Men do the Gremlins-y homage, and then like the Terminator homage where one of them's like melting and he's like giving the thumbs
But it
up.
also made me.
all
It
that.
also made me think of the little ashes from Army of Darkness.
Yes.
A lot.
Oh,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
absolutely love that
Absolutely.
bit. And I'm sorry, I love that bit.
Yeah.
I think it's quite frankly, from a technical standpoint, I think it's really well done, given the time. But
The whole
that's
bit
a rabbit hole that I'm not going to take us down.
Oh, you mean
I also-
Ashes, little guys? Yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I
yeah.
love-
in the mill. Yeah.
I loved also how they kept the kind of really unstable nature of the dogs and how they would run and slide and slip. And, they're not infallible.
I think there were some practical terror dogs that they in this, at least in some of the parts. That it looked
I
like,
thought they looked great, didn't they?
Yeah,
the way they moved.
Those are
if you're gonna do them all in CG like that, I thought that it was really cool that they kept so much of their original personality.
That's sort of that stop
Because
motion,
even though it's very
element to it.
it's slicker, of course, and your mileage may vary on if that works for you or not. But the way that they would trip and like slide and do all of their stuff
Yep.
that was exceptionally hard to do, actually, way harder to do with animatronics and the way that they run and everything in the first one, keeping their personality, so much of their personality was impressive from an animation standpoint, like things I'm looking for, but they didn't have to, and they did, and I thought that was they might have like a little bit leaned in a little bit too hard, because they're tripping and scooting and scrambling a little much.
I
but
think
I thought that was
did
really
a good
cool.
job of keeping them scary, though. Like,
absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
They sure did.
I think one of the things I felt like that I thought the ghosts in the 2016 one were cool looking. Like I just rewatched it the other day. I especially think the electric chair ghost is extremely cool looking, but this movie really went into the monster movie aspects of Ghostbusters really well. And I because of the ages of the protagonists, I was a little worried that they were going to make it less scary, and I think that if anything, it was more frightening than the previous one. And I think that they did with the terror dogs, like, because they were front and center, like more heavily than even in they did a good job of first of all not showing too much of them. It was kind of a slow reveal, and then till we finally got it. But then when we did see them, they were awkward, but they still seemed very formidable, like very ferocious. And I don't know, like I was really happy with the way they were. I don't know, the terror dogs are probably some of my favorite movie monsters from the 80s. Like, I think they're just really iconic. And Stay Puft is of course great, but Stay Puft is also absurd. Like the terror dogs are actually scary.
And I don't know who built or animated them in the original one, if it was Dykstra or Jim Allen or something.
No, I have no idea.
I don't know. Dennis Muren may have been involved. I'm just not sure. But I always enjoyed them, and I thought this was great.
It recreates the look of a model, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, in a sense, these look like those models. Like this could have been stop motion animated or whatever it was that they did.
Yeah, it was. They did stop motion practical, and and in the earlier one, of course, now we can see how some of the composites aren't as clean as we'd like. Not that I care, quite frankly. This was cleaner, but it was a wonderful homage, if you will.
That's pretty great, and that's so clever. Yeah, go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
I think also Ghoster, like, upping the game. Like,
Gozer was so badass, and
wasn't that
really
cool?
Great.
I love the thing they did with the light. The light inside Gozer.
Yes. Well, let's switch over to performances, and you can start with Gozer. And then if there's anybody else,
I want to say one more thing about the effects though with Gozer, and then I think that like my favorite thing in this whole movie, and it's such a small thing, it's only a moment, like when the original Ghostbusters show up. And they start to cross the streams on Gozer, and Gozer grabs hold of the stream
and starts
like
wrapping it around.
Them. I was like, that is so cool, and shows us, like, because Gozer isn't in the original Ghostbusters that much. So like this actually, I feel like made Gozer more of a character, but also showed off how powerful Gozer is. But that is like, you're not going to get me the same way twice.
Gozer definitely learned.
Yeah. Apparently, this is Olivia Wilde as Gozer.
Yes.
And I didn't know that until I just read it earlier. I think that Olivia
I didn't
Wilde
know that either. That's awesome.
Unrecognizable.
Yeah. Yes.
Pretty awesome.
Really fantastic.
I mean, they kept the very Nagel painting
for sure.
Yes.
That was so great.
Oh, Tony, that's awesome. What a great way to put it. A Nagel painting. You're right.
Yes,
that's Jason's favorite. One of Jason's favorite '80s things is the Nagel paintings.
Of course,
but they kept that and then amped it, and that was. And again, I a lot of times I prefer practical effects, but I think they nailed a lot of what made this cool. Taking and being very careful about a lot of it. again, if you didn't think it worked, that's fine. You can call me out on that. But I thought that they took a lot of the keys from the original and just kind of amped it. And not everyone who is making a sequel or making some part of a franchise will do that. Like, I know best. I'm gonna make this, has to be this, this way. I think that it was a nice blend of contemporary effects.
Yeah.
That took where this could go, and also because we got a different thing. And I really liked all of the Shandor stuff too. It was creepy. That part was also creepy, when he's kind of coming back the first time. That part is creepy, definitely in a Goonies kind of way. Like, oh no, what's gonna happen? I really dug that. That worked for me. But they could have done a lot of different things. And I think the way they stayed fairly true to a lot of the original designs, but then amped it. It worked for me. And like I said, I'm usually very cynical about these things. I enjoyed that.
No, I agree. And those choices, it reminds me very much of how in the new Star Wars movies, they made the very deliberate choice to say that in the Star Wars universe, screens look like IBM, IBM 8088s. Basically, they've all got green lighting and very basic,
and
graphics.
Every binocular will be crappy optics.
Yes,
which
and that's just
me, but
right. That flickers
that's
and
just
everything.
The way it is.
And that's just the way it is in their universe. And it's a wonderful way of taking just accidents of the universe of the 80s and saying that defines our look of this world. And I love that, even though I'm sure a lot of people roll their eyes at stuff like that, which is something
if you want to see a really good version of that, I think I've mentioned it before, the art design for the Alien game, the super creepy one where you're being chased by an alien, they made the deliberate decision that the screens are Apple II green screen. Like, it's the world of Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything that was an Alien, the way it looks in Alien.
Yeah.
But that's the technology, and this is how a space station looks in Alien, and this, like, everything has that strange. Now everything would be nice in color, that's fine, but the art direction in that game, that's one of the most intense games I've ever played, because I had to quit playing it because it was so it was scary, and I was coming home from a very stressful job and playing a very stressful game.
Yeah.
But art direction, it's done really well. But the art direction in that, where they decided, like, this is what Alien looks like.
Love it.
It was one of the best pieces of art direction I've seen in the past. Those choices in the past decade have actually we're gonna keep this. And this is how that world works. And, I feel like this, I got a nostalgia twinge. And again, maybe this is wrong, maybe this is right. But in the very first time you see a pink, purple, blue spirit go flying across the screen at the beginning of the movie, and you go, you know what? That's what a spirit in Ghostbusters looks like.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And there's one, and it goes, and it goes past. You're like, I'm back. This is where I'm at.
In the Ghostbusters world. Yes.
Yep.
I think it's also easier because this is a movie franchise that doesn't have unless you're looking at the cartoon show, which of course adds on hours of stuff, but as movies go, this is fairly small. Like, this isn't like something that has a bunch of entries in it. It's not James Bond, it's not Godzilla. There isn't like a huge canon to deal with here. There's within one timeline, one remake, and it's a lot easier, I think, to keep things consistent. But the stuff that they do keep consistent is like across all 4 movies, like the proton pack sound effect is consistent. Like, this is what a proton beam sounds like.
Yeah. I love that. All right. Do we want to touch on any, because we should definitely be wrapping up, and I want to make sure we don't lose anything. Are there any other performances that anybody wants to?
Well, I feel
like we should talk about Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sexiest man alive, baby. No, I really enjoyed that whole relationship. I thought it was really fun that that we have it's a little cliche that, oh, hey, is your mom single? I think I'm gonna hit on her or whatever, but it works because he's super cute.
Mm-hmm.
And, he gets a free pass.
Yeah, but I think it's hilarious that he's just like so like he's doing this summer school class, but he's like so doesn't give a crap about it, and so he's
Showing
showing
the
the
most
kids. He's
inappropriate
showing the
movies
kids
possible.
horribly
What is he? He
inappropriate
shows them
movies.
Cujo was the first movie, and what I can't remember.
Child's Play.
Child's Play,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
that he can work on his seismology maps in the other room and not be
Yeah.
bothered by the children. But then he I think it's great that he becomes like a father figure mentor for what's the young girl's name?
Phoebe.
Her Phoebe, yeah,
Phoebe, yeah,
Phoebe.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
McKenna
love
Grace,
that
yeah.
relationship. I love that he's kind of a stand-in,
Yeah.
for the dad. I mean, I just
Yep.
think it's the relationships
Well, it's
with him are great, and I love that he's, that he becomes the Rick Moranis character. It's
Yes,
I
all
wish
yes,
that
that
there
was
had been
hilarious.
more
Key
of
key
that.
master.
I
Yeah.
know. I wish they dragged that out a little
Yeah.
bit more.
I liked the brief bits we had of him, possessed, but I kind of wonder if there's more on the cutting
Room
Just
floor.
well, like when well, I don't want to jump to because I feel like this is another topic in a way, but in fact, I'll save it. But the the other thing about Paul Rudd that I thought was cool was that from a story standpoint, he served two purposes because he's a seismologist and he's studying this anomaly of earthquakes in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But he's also a Ghostbusters fanboy. He's kind of the stand-in for guys like me.
Yep.
And so he's able to spout off all the lore that these kids
he's the
need.
exposition, but he's also, and it is interesting. We talked about the impact of the internet, which changes so many things when you have a franchise that's lasted this long. That he, what people remember and how they deal with this kind of idea that supernatural things can sometimes have their own, like supernatural things will want to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
There's a lot
That's
of
right.
lore that basically where there's a collective. You don't remember that? Well, no.
It's
I
like
think
the silence
my
in
stepdad
Doctor
may
Who.
have known about, or my cousin mentioned that. And there's also moving it out of New York. Probably nobody in New York can forget the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but in Oklahoma, you go, that was weird, but that was in New York City.
Strange things happen there.
The last few years, when I was a kid and I watched Ghostbusters 2, I would get frustrated that there would be people that still thought the Ghostbusters were committing hoaxes. But if there's anything the last few years have taught me, that if you have a circle of people that say things repetitious enough and loud enough and they're in the right places, you can make people believe just about anything. And there definitely was like a vested interest in discrediting the Ghostbusters from certain political parts of the New York government, and I fully accept that now. Like, okay, that people could prove the existence of ghosts, and no one would believe them, even if there was a gigantic marshmallow monster.
Yep.
Yes.
Like,
because there would just be people on TV saying
that's Photoshop.
That was all animated. That's all fake.
That's right.
Everybody
fake news.
Yeah.
Yep. In monster movie happy hour terms, there are people who simply will not believe an ologist.
Yes.
An ologist of any kind is not to be believed.
That's right. I love that you guys use that term, by the way. Yes.
Well, it happens way too frequently. I apologize, but it works.
I love it. No,
it works quite
well.
But
you bring up an excellent point that in this movie in particular, but this is a very pro-science franchise.
Oh yeah.
And this movie in particular is about like leaning into that love of, like, Paul Rudd has the great line that science is punk rock.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I loved that. Like
it's like is it safe? And he's like, no.
Yeah. I swear I almost hurt myself smiling at that line,
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
And even more, they go into how these proton packs are not exactly well tested or vetted. I mean, they're dangerous and terrible. And
in real life,
kind of
apparently,
goes back
they're like
into the
super heavy.
Yeah,
that goes back into how that edgy kind of scrappy nature of the first two, especially.
Yeah.
And how, like, hey, we've got these things. Well, so we've done our research, right? Well, no.
No.
You got to take care of ghosts. I
The
mean,
crossing the
it'll
streams
hack
thing
things
shows
in
up at the
two, and
very last moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was
It'll
really
I
cool.
gotta
destroy
say, I love that
anything.
for
Yeah,
the
I love it.
effect of the proton pack. By the way, they actually have a motor in the pack, so that's why it's so heavy, so that the actors are actually feeling like the rumbling of the
It's
thing.
Really?
Right.
That's
It's
why
so
Bill Murray
so
hated it so
cool.
much. He's like, it's so uncomfortable and
I
heavy.
remember-
Well, I
He was
can't
so- he was
imagine
so
at his
whiny.
age too. It
He was
probably
so
hasn't
whiny
gotten
about
any-
this movie.
Oh dear.
But he's,
but
you know, he's great in it though. Like he's not
Yeah,
in it
he
that
is.
much, but I
Yeah.
feel like all of the when the original, I mean, Dan Aykroyd does most of the heavy lifting. He's the only
Yep.
one that gets more than one scene.
Well, it's his
But like when
baby.
the three of them, when the three of them show up together, I think that they slip back into their old roles
Yes.
are great. And Bill
Yeah,
Murray
really well.
hilarious, you know, like
Yeah, he
they're,
is.
you know, like the chemistry is still
Yep.
the chemistry is
Oh,
still
it's still
there.
it is. It's really a crowd pleaser. You're there happy to see it. In my audience, it got a big cheer. I mean, you know, this was a feel good moment, and I got zero problems with that because
Good.
I have
Also,
aged.
the
I
after
have aged
credits.
well past cynicism and into whatever the hell I am now. Like just like, oh, I
Also,
enjoy
the
this.
after
and that's fine.
credits sequence where Sigourney Weaver is using the electroshock
Yeah.
The second
thing.
card,
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah.
And
I would love
he's
that callback.
and I love the line of when she's like he was like I have a confession to make. I only shock the girls, and then she shocks them
guys.
again, and or I only shock the guys, and she shocks them again, and he goes, I know I was wrong, and now I know it. I accept that.
Yes, that's really great.
Like he's
You know,
Although I am bummed because I skipped, I guess, the second. That there's two credit sequences, and
Yeah.
the
it was
second
late,
credits
skipped out,
good
and
the
I was
credits.
second one,
mad.
But I
was
missed. I
kinda-
missed the second one.
The second one was a
Yeah,
little
me too.
weird because all it does is set up. It seems to be setting up the next movie, I guess.
Hmm.
And it's Ernie Hudson talking to Annie Potts about how he's got this huge, like, global corporation now that he wants to do good things with. And I'm like,
And he
what?
rebuys the
Yeah,
fire
he buys the
firehouse.
fire. Yeah, he buys the
And,
firehouse back from.
and he
from
has the
Robert
old
De Niro.
car, and that's it.
Oh.
That's it. He
And that's
parks the
it, but-
car.
but
and
it
the
Well,
seems
they
to be
car.
show
setting up
the
for the next
containment
movie.
unit is flashing.
Oh, that's right.
So-
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
he's got a
so
ghost.
I'm gonna again defer back to the comic books that I think that they're gonna take some lore from that. Is there was a series in the IDW Ghostbusters comic books called Ghostbusters International, where they ended up having like lots of different Ghostbusters teams across the country, and
That's
then
what I
later
was
on
wondering.
across.
I was like, is this
Man.
a Ghostbusters Global?
I'm betting that's what they're gonna do because like imagine what they could do with a lot of the crazy folklore from across the world and everything.
I'm just
like
that's what I'm getting is like Ghostbusters meets Mr. Vampire.
Yeah.
Man, I'm there.
Yeah.
Ghost-
No,
If I could get
Ghostbusters-
that would be amazing.
like you know, and they in the comics they bring back the Walter Peck character because he's like their liaison with
Oh,
the
really?
government, and that they have to kind of have this uneasy alliance with. And
Interesting.
at one point he actually has to bust a ghost himself. It's good stuff, and it's rife for adaptation. And I you know, here's the thing for the people fans of the last one that feel kind of disheartened the fact that they didn't do a sequel to that and they did this.
Yeah.
This movie doing well is your best chance to see the 2016 team again, like because
Sure.
they
Sure.
comic books they tied it all together and they can do it in the movies too. So
Sure they can.
yeah, like all that this has done is that they have proven that there is an audience for Ghostbusters films, and you know, so hopefully we'll get more of them.
Give
And
Chris Hemsworth a better part, is all I have to say.
Chris Hemsworth was hilarious.
Yeah, he was. He
I'm
was
just
good.
kidding.
All
I'm
right.
just kidding.
I
Okay.
enjoyed
He
that
has
movie
no
a lot
right.
too. I really did. I thought that was.
He
a good
has
movie.
no right to be that handsome and that funny at the same time.
Right?
That's all I'm saying.
Seriously.
Okay,
But,
we should get our final thoughts because
really should.
we've been going a long time. So we'll go the same direction as we. And if you want to mention anything, like I forgot to mention the amazing music, so I'll probably put that in my final thoughts. But you're welcome to as well. Drew, final thoughts. Ghostbusters Afterlife.
It's okay. So here's something I did want to circle back to, and I will briefly before giving my. I could go on for hours about this movie. We all know it,
Sure.
but it is weird to me that they brought in K. Simmons to play Ivo Shandor, and he basically is there to get ripped in half by Gozer. So I am almost certain that there has to be deleted scenes of more of him. Maybe not. Maybe Jason
I mean, I thought it was effective.
It's effective. It's just like he's such a big.
It's a cameo, essentially.
Right.
Yeah,
it's one of the briefest cameos that I can think of.
He's such a recognizable actor to just be instantly torn in half in a grisly fashion. Again, this movie is leaning way further into the horror elements than the 2016, but
that was his Janet Leigh shower sequence.
Right. I do like that they gave him basically, even though it's Oklahoma and not Kansas, I do like that they gave him basically a Wizard of Oz looking like his whole demeanor has that kind of strange
you're exactly right.
Beard and mustache and hair and outfit, everything, but they're like, oh, this is how somebody out this way in Tornado Land. This is
what a mystic would look like, or whatever.
I thought that was great,
man. So I'm trying to make my thoughts. I'm sure there is a ton of things that I missed, but I and if people want to talk to me about this on Twitter or on Facebook, they're more than welcome. They've been holding back really posting too much about it until we did this episode, but I loved this movie. I think it was a great tribute to the original film. I think it's got a lot of heart, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm fine with some schmaltz every now and then. Like, I think that this movie was good. It was good schmaltz. It wasn't the bad kind. And if we get more Ghostbusters movies out of it, great. If this is the end of it, also great. I just, this movie made me happy, and I'm glad that it existed, and I'm glad that I was able to talk about this with y'all, because this was such a fun capper to my ecto cooler fueled weekend. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Drew. David Geister, I'm so pleased that you could join us, and I know that we have so many people that I hope you had a chance to get a word in edgewise.
Oh, plenty. Yes.
And so do you have any final thoughts to share with us?
Yes. McKenna Grace, the actress who played Phoebe Spengler, was just outstanding. She was probably, for me, the best part of the entire movie, and I liked a lot. I liked damn near everything in this movie, but she just really stood out. I would say she's a reason for somebody to watch it, if nothing else. I enjoyed it.
I think a lot of people, even critics who have been very harsh on the movie, most have agreed that, if nothing else, like, she's pretty amazing in it, and I agree with that.
Well, like Paul Rudd and Carrie Coons get top billing, but let's face it, she's the real. She has to carry this movie on her 15-year-olds, and she absolutely does.
Yep. Without a doubt. Yeah. So no. Final thoughts. I loved it. I really did. As I said at the very beginning, it's this movie. It's the experience I needed right now that I didn't actually know I needed, and so I am so thankful that you collectively put your boot in my backside, and I got to see a movie in the theater for the first time in almost 2 years.
Really?
And got to see in the theater with a couple of my favorite people in the whole world. So it was a great experience all around, and I enjoyed being able to join in with you tonight. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, and I'm so glad. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
Well, yeah, I was going to say also what David said, which was that I just loved McKenna Grace. I loved Finn Wolfhard. I loved the kids, the other kids, Logan Kim and Celeste O'Connor are the podcast, and Lucky, the girl that ends up getting, also becoming a Ghostbuster. And they're just, I think the kid cast is amazing. I thought they did a great job. McKenna Grace is, I already liked her from Designated Survivor. She's the daughter on that. And then, of course, everybody knows Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things. But they did a great, they just did a great job. So that was a lot of fun. I like the ambiance. I like the the energy of this movie. I just think it's a lot of fun. I mean, I just really enjoyed watching it, and I hope that that people, even if there are some people who are hard on it, that people will give it a chance and go see it. I'm sure that it's probably already has huge blockbuster, box office. So I'm not too worried.
Thank you. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot. Again, I'm with Drew that we could talk about this for a lot longer.
Yeah, clearly.
There's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
really great bits. I, especially coming from, I was extremely skeptical. I didn't know how it was going to work. Was it going to be just like, oh, look, it's Ghostbusters, but Stranger Things, because people like that.
Mm,
And I just didn't know how it was going to be. And I tried to keep an open mind, and I was really pleasantly surprised in a way I definitely didn't anticipate. I'm also still, I still a little wary of going back to the theater. I'm mostly, I'm masked up the whole time. Except, when I'm kind of putting popcorn under my mask at the draft house. And that's, so it takes a lot for me to go to a movie, and especially even at the draft house, since Fantastic Fest, I haven't had what I would call an optimal crowd experience, which has made me kind of sad, because that's the one place where they do enforce, like, no talking and no cell phones and stuff, and it's still been rough since Fantastic Fest. Not the case here for whatever reason. I went to a late night, and it was good crowd, everything worked, it was great. So seeing it in the theater there, even despite my kind of anxiety about it, I fell into this movie. I had a blast. I left earlier than I should have. Based on the fact that there's two credits sequences, post-credit sequences. But I really enjoyed it. I thought the cast was great. It worked in ways that I didn't think were going to work. And it does take big swings. You're not making it a comedy, not making it that kind of scrappy, hey, we're, gonna be this 3 or 4 people dealing with this, and making it more of a, like I said, a Goonies ET kind of movie instead. That could have gone terribly.
Yes.
And I was, like I said, I was skeptical, and it worked for me. I know where some critics, and critics I know actually and respect a lot, I understand where they've come from with it and respect that as well. But you know what? I'm with David. This worked for me, and it was the right thing at the right time. And I was very pleasantly surprised. I thought the effects were great. There's just a lot of really cool stuff, in my opinion. So your mileage may vary, but I'm down with this, and I would watch more deleted scenes. I would watch more director's cut kind of stuff. I don't necessarily need a longer thing, but I'm with Drew as well that, if there's deleted stuff that we get on a Blu-ray or on streaming, I would totally watch that as well.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Tony. It sure is a big swing. It in a sense, I really enjoyed it, and yet you could say that this was maybe the best Ghostbusters fanfic put to film ever. I mean, because it's just, it takes the kind of risks that normally you would only take on paper, and I was really happy to see that. So, by the way, music. Oh, the music cues were so neat. How they would how they started out early in the film with just a portion of the old incidental music, which was by Elmer Bernstein, I think, and slowly build it until by the time they're doing target practice, the whole incidental music is there, and then they keep building on it. So by the end action scene, they have a whole new orchestral arrangement of that theme, and that was really neat. Because I
they
haven't thought about
also
it in years.
showed a lot of restraint in not playing the Ray Parker Jr. theme song until the end credits.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah. Instead, their whole leitmotif was that ba, 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 which just so neat. I mean, I really loved it. I went to see Ghostbusters, not for nothing, but I was 12 years old. I went to see it with Incher Yo, who is my partner at Castlebridge. I remember that to this day. So it's just so funny to think how much these relationships just exist in our
Mhm.
lives and stay with us and all that time. So
There's
you know.
there's even some bits that are almost subliminal in the way they bring it in. I was
Mm.
noticing, like, that was the other reason to see it in a theater with really good sound.
Yes,
There were
yes.
some bits where they do it even more clever than maybe I don't know if other people would have shown the same restraint. So when people say, "Oh, this is a nostalgia trip," this, like, to me, the score was not nearly as ham-fisted as I think they
Oh, absolutely.
definitely could have done. There were some really clever ways that they introduced the themes and brought them around and where they would place them that I kind of went, I got you. Okay,
Yeah.
there's some bits in the basement, like, lab, that were just like, okay, cool. And I get
Yeah.
it. That there was I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised with that as well, because it could have just as easily been like, we're gonna hit you with this because we love needle drops and
That's true. It's a good point.
I did find it kind of weird that the kids in this town have maybe a more dated playlist of music than you would expect kids to have in the age of the internet and Spotify. But that's neither here nor there. I'll take
Like I
it.
say, it is practically the Footloose town. I mean, if
Right.
they could have started, at that drive-in, they could have started dancing to DeBarge. I would not have thought it was out of place. I mean, it was really, yes. All right. So that brings us to the end. I want to get our endorsements, but it's been really nice coming back to enjoy this with you guys. And I know we're going to take off a couple more weeks to get us through the holidays, unless we come back from our Christmas episode. Things get tougher as we enter the holiday season, but so we'll figure that out. So endorsements, like, what do you want to lay on us? What have you been enjoying reading? Drew, go for it, man.
First off, I have been, because I'm working on another draft of my Christmas folklore book, actually.
Cool.
And my long gestating project. And I'm trying to get into the spirit of that. And one of the things I am reading is Krampus, the Yule Lord, which is a dark fantasy illustrated novel by Brom. And it's kind of I got it last year when I got a bunch of books for research, and a mixture of stuff that were actually legitimate folklore books, and then some of them were fiction books like this is. And it's kind of Krampus filtered in King, like a Stephen King lens. I think if you're a Stephen King fan, you'd find a lot to like about this. But the illustrations that he does for it are these sort of Frank Frazetta-esque illustrations. Are really interesting. First of all, his take on Santa Claus is a sort of studly older man with like a big beard and huge biceps. He's still got like the gut, but he's what the kids would call a quote unquote a daddy thing. So it's a little more sexualized version of Santa Claus than I think we're used to seeing. And
ouch,
definitely for kids. Definitely not for kids. Like this, I should stress, even though this is a book about Christmas, definitely not something you can read with your kids. Should be this is a horror novel and should be read only by adults. The key on topic, I think that this is a good weekend to revisit other things from the Ghostbusters franchise. I watched the previous 3 films. I'm probably going to go back and check out the real Ghostbusters, and maybe cherry pick some episodes of Extreme Ghostbusters. But there's a lot more to Ghostbusters than just the movies. I name dropped the IDW comic books several times, and those are awesome. Like if you're looking for more Ghostbusters related things, I think that those comics are some of the best continuations of the series that aren't a film. And they have all of it. Like they touch on basically every version of Ghostbusters within those. They have the 2016 film. They do the real Ghostbusters. There's even a sort of ultimate Generation X fanfic storyline where they team up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's good stuff. And so I think that those would be a good thing if you feel like you're like, wow, I've seen all the film backwards and forwards. I don't feel like rewatching this again. Check out the comics. They're awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. David, do you have any endorsements for us this week?
Just real simply, I finally watched the movie Love and Monsters from
that was fun.
Yes, 2020. And for those who aren't aware, it's basically 7 years after being separated, a young man embarks on a quest to find his girlfriend in the monster apocalypse. And there were pleasant surprises all throughout. My dear wife and I watched it last night and enjoyed it immensely.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. Julia, what about you? Do you have anything?
I have a few things. I want to start with the interview that you guys did. Dave Geister interviewed Jason, and I just thought it was really a fun interview. I enjoyed it very much. Even though I'd actually heard most of the stories, I still thought it was really fun.
That's really nice.
So
Very
that
much
was
enjoyed it.
really,
Yeah.
really good. And then we just watched King Richard, because then like Drew and Tony, I guess you, all three of you, Jason and I actually do go to the movie theater.
We're
all the time.
weird. We just go to the movies all the time. So
We go to the movie theater constantly. So we went to see King Richard, which is about the father, Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena Williams, and it's Will Smith, and it's really, really interesting. I thought it was, for me personally. I mean, I always am checking my privilege, I think, but gosh, especially watching just life in Compton. Of an African American family who's trying to show that, like, hey, my kids are really super talented. How do I get past all of the obstacles that are in the way to make sure that they can achieve their potential? Gosh, I mean, you just really feel like, wow, we're just so freaking privileged all the time. But anyways, that was really interesting. And then I don't know if Jason's going to talk about clickbait at all, but we've been watching clickbait on Netflix, and gosh, it's a fun. It's not that super original. Like I endorsed a while back Mr. Mercedes, and I keep coming back to that as being one of the most original miniseries I've seen because it's not predictable. Like every time something happens, that I think it's going to go one way, it goes completely different way. This is not that. This show, you're like, as you go along, you're like, okay, I could see 3 or 4 things that could happen here, and it's usually one of those. But it's really entertaining, and the soundtrack is amazing. I actually really want to get the soundtrack for this because the music is really cool.
So that's clickbait, and yeah, I'm amazed.
Is that what did I say? Did I say clickbait?
No, I'm just repeating it because you said it and then you had a long description.
Yes.
So I want to make sure people caught that. Yeah.
Yes.
Tony, what about you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've been watching just a bunch of random stuff with Rain. I do have 2 things that I'm anxious to delve into, and I haven't had a chance yet. But when Criterion was doing their 50% off sale recently, they have a box set of Once Upon a Time in China movies, like all of them. And I'm super stoked to get into that. Also, there's again, you need a region-free player or a player that you can change regions for. There's, I think it's Eureka did a box set called Cinematic Vengeance, 8 Kung Fu classics from director Joseph Koh. It's Kuo, by the way. And that has a bunch of classics that I'm anxious to delve into. I've been saving some of them because been wanting to watch some of them with my brother, but yeah, I'm back on my martial arts stuff, so that's those 2 are sitting there waiting. That and Ricky-O, Story of Ricky, I've also been saving that, so that's an amazing film. I checked out a little bit of it before, and it's a brand new really nice print of that. But some of these are region free. The Once Upon a Time in China is Criterion, so of course it's it's for us. But if you ever that was one I couldn't pass up. I'm super stoked. But I'm trying to think. Also, we finished the Wu-Tang Clan series, season 2, and that's done extremely well. I've been super impressed with that, but we wrapped that up recently. Fans of music, fans of even if Rain's not even really a hip hop person, even though some of the stuff I grew up with, and it's a compelling story, and it's done really well. There's a lot of really good directors and really good. There's certain episodes that kind of go against the grain or are done really artsy, and there's some really great bits in it. I definitely recommend, even if you're not a hip hop fan. It's just a really good series. If you are, then and you're familiar with Wu-Tang Clan's music, then it's even better. But yeah, that was. And to the point where she was at a light recently and recognized stuff by Method Man, which is definitely before this would not have happened. And I was kind of like, I thought that was pretty cool. So
Excellent.
Those are mine. What I'm kind of doing currently.
Beautiful. My endorsements. Tony mentioned Patrick Nagel. If you don't know who Patrick Nagel is, he is. I mean, without the existence of Patrick Nagel, I don't know what Duran Duran would have put on the covers of their albums. And, if you've ever been by a nail salon in any city in America, there are paintings on the windows. And if Patrick Nagel had not existed, those paintings would have to look very different. Patrick Nagel, unfortunately, was a lifelong non-exerciser, but then he went and participated in a Heart Association aerobics show in Santa Monica, and then had a heart attack and died in the parking lot afterwards. And his paintings live with us. So that was 1984. Patrick Nagel died, but he set the tone for art in America all through the 80s. And
I just want to say that this is why I don't run.
Right.
I'm with Julia. That stuff is dangerous. Stay
is.
away from that.
So good old Nagel. Anyway, if you're not, the funny thing is you will enter that in Patrick Nagel and just go, oh right, yeah. And that's his work. The original pieces are quite expensive, by the way. I mean, an original Nagel is I don't know. I was reading that one was going for like $425,000. So Anyway, so look up Patrick Nagel, and I also am reading this book about Plan 9 from Outer Space by Catherine Coldiron. It is one of the best discussions of bad films I've ever read. It's really beautiful and wonderful, and I enjoyed it very much. And I'm going to interview Ms. Coldiron this week on my interview show. But even if I weren't, I love this book, and it was really great. So that's it. So I hope that you guys. Tony just sent me a wonderful Nagel takeoff for Ghostbusters, which just blows my mind.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that if you look up Gozer, and Nagel,
Gozer Nagel,
definitely put those. I mean, there's a lot of that's firmly in 80s, but if you look, somebody was smart enough to put those together, and there's several images. So
yeah, now I want to go back and
surprised.
change my my intro line when Jason introduced me at the beginning to "Are you a god?"
Yes.
Yes, we're all gods.
Based on this thing that that Tony just sent.
So everyone, thank you very much. It's been a delight talking about this.
So great to have you, Dave.
My pleasure.
David, thank you for joining us.
You.
Tony and
Take care,
Drew,
everybody.
it was so great talking to you, and I know that I will talk to you again
Happy
before the
Thanksgiving,
holiday
everybody.
season is done. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy your friends and family and whoever you choose to spend these warm moments with. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.